that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, I need a weapon, and welcome back to the Halo Expand Universe. Day I have for you, Halo Renegades by Kelly Gay. I loved it, but genuinely, really loved it. In fact, so much so, I'm going to say, Kelly Gay wrote it, you should read it. This and the Forerunner trilogy by Greg Bear are like the two things that I would actively recommend. Like, for genuine, really deep enjoyment. This was solid. So they meet the Renegade, the Ace of Spades crew, still dealing with the loss of Cade from Smoke and Shadow. And they interact with this AI. Who is this AI? 343 Guilty Spark, otherwise known in his human life 100,000 years ago as Chakas. As Spark is also regaining his memory. This is a very character-heavy piece, and they go on an adventure to go do something for Spark, and in return he'll let them get salvage and stuff. Also some resolutions to Ryan's arc in terms of her father from Halo Wars. But if you like the Forerunner trilogy by Greg Bear, you're like, that's really good stuff, and you liked Chakas / Guilty Spark, this is required reading. You owe it to yourself to read this, and I'm not going to really say anything else about it, non-spoiler wise. It's solid. It is really, really good. You know, I've liked most of what I've read in Halo, but to be honest, like, nothing that I've loved and held close to my heart. And even the Forerunner trilogy by Greg Bear, like, that's really good. At the same time, Greg Bear's not much of an emotional writer. He's more of like a sci-fi, like, ideas person. But this takes, like, all that and makes it personal. So, if you want a good Halo story, I recommend this one. Though, don't read it if you haven't read the Forerunner trilogy by Greg Bear. It kind of ruins, like, half of the weight of that. But yeah, you can just spoilers now if you don't want that. Time to bail. Anyway, time for spoilers. So, it begins with, there's these parts throughout the book that are italicized, which are just like Spark's thoughts from his perspective and everything. So we have this whole thing with still being human at the beginning, which is just really well done. And really, just really well written. And Ryan and the crew, you know, they still want to help Ryan find her dad, but they also want revenge for what happened to Cade with Gek Lar, Jewel Mandama's second in command. Oni and Kip confront Ryan, stuff goes down, Kip passes away, and they just barely make it out of that. Nico and Lessa, the brother and sister, feel a lot of grief, and they deal with it in a lot of different ways, and it's amazing how we get a chapter from the brother's perspective, and then after that immediately get a chapter from the sister's perspective. And all of it's just it's just done so well with those two. And I already liked, like, the whole crew generally in the last book, but, like, I really started to care about all of them in this book. They eventually find Guilty Spark. Now the thing is too, you're like, what? He's a floating ball. What's that? What's what's this? Now I think this might have been in preparation for Halo 5, because in Halo 5 Guardians there's this thing called like the Warden or whatever, and it's like a robot, and it's got like a human like body and facial features that it can actually like make faces. So I think that is basically what Guilty Spark kind of like just uploaded his body into. They don't call it like anything like that. They call it like the armature or whatever, but I'm pretty sure it's meant to be something similar to that. Um, but yeah, so now he has a body. He can walk around. He can help out. He can shoot things. He's not just a eyeball that goes, "I am C43 Guilty Spark. Monitor this installation. Quickly, Reclaimer." So and his interactions with the crew are just really good. It's less snarky because there's a bit more sincerity and kindness to 343 now that he's regaining his memories, as opposed to HK47 from KOTOR, who's just all snark. But it's still a really fun dynamic. We also, from Oni's perspective, get reintroduced to Annabelle. Now, if you don't remember who that is, I didn't. I looked it up because she kept being mentioned. I'm like, who's this? Am I supposed to know? Annabelle was from Hunters in the Dark, because I completely forgot. So that's a cool little connection just between books as well. The next note I wrote down is Greg Bear versus Kelly Gay. Now, like I said, like this book kind of requires that you've read the Forerunner trilogy by Greg Bear, because it very much leans upon that for the emotional aspects of Guilty Spark in this book. But the thing about Greg Bear's writing is it's very, from the limited amount of sci-fi I've read, it's very much what sci-fi usually is. Like space opera is different. Like Star Wars is space opera, and that's a different thing from sci-fi. But sci-fi definitely tends to be, and this is true even of the Dune book that I read, so at least in my opinion, Dune was about the ideas, about the plot, about the world building, less so about character. Like, sure, there are characters like Stogar, Paul, Moeddib, Atreides, Chani, Duncan, Idaho. But all these characters, they're characters, but they don't really have. It's not really about them either. It is, but it isn't. It's not deep. It's weird because Dune, I use that as an example, but like you're constantly in their head, and yet I don't feel like it's a very personal story, if that makes sense. And Greg Bear is very much in the same way, where he's telling this grand story, and it's less important about like the individual characters. I mean, there's certainly moments, but it's not really about that. So you take all those great ideas that Greg Bear did and orchestrated in the Forerunner trilogy, and then you humanize it and you personalize it through Chakas, through Guilty Spark, who has lived such a long life and been a morally gray person, a decent person, a horrible person, as the monitor of Installation 04, to whatever he is now. Because he's human, but he's also Forerunner. And there's just so beauty in how she writes that I really, really appreciate. I cannot stress. I mean, again, I don't think I'd care about it as much if I hadn't read the trilogy. That being said, she even writes in like the acknowledgement section, I have to thank Greg Bear, because it's where like most of like the big beats for 343 Guilty Spark I got. And I'm just gonna stay Spark from now on because that's what they nickname him. But she did such a good job, and the emotional beats hit when it comes to him because of her writing. So, and again, I'm going to say this too. If you're a Halo fan, like, you're probably expecting a lot of action, and to be honest, there isn't, and I prefer that so vastly more because, like, it's a video game. Like, yeah, there's poo, 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 left and right. That's great. But in a novel, like, give me those character moments. Give me those just talking sections. Give it to me. Just do that. Because, like, in a video game, yeah, I want to go shooty, shooty, bang, bang. But in a book, I want to give a damn. And when there's 1,000 action scenes, and this, doesn't apply to all fans. This is the same problem I have with Star Wars. And this is, just a me thing. But I have a really hard time visualizing action in novels unless there are certain authors who can do it for me. But it's not often. I usually just drown out and look for like somebody's dying, but I'm not paying attention because I don't care about action. I care about plot. I care about characters. That's what I live for. That's what I strive for. That's why I consume fiction, to escape reality. And just reading about a bunch of action scenes, for me personally, doesn't do that. So I was actually floored by the Forerunner trilogy for not including action. Like 95% of the Forerunner trilogy has no action in it. And then there's a little bit more in these books, but still, it is still mainly character pieces, which I vastly prefer. It also makes some implications as to Spark being important in the future, which I doubt it with how 343 goes about like games. That I mean, it would be great. I would love to see Guilty Spark like alongside Master Chief. Like imagine that in the suit, in the body that he's in now. Like that would just be like so cool. Maybe, instead of the Arbiter, you get to play as Guilty Spark. Like that would be awesome. I don't think it will ever happen, but that would be awesome. Especially with the way things are going now. Like Infinite is such a departure from what Halo 4 and 5 are, and maybe it's for the best, but and then there's all the layoffs and everything going on at Microsoft right now, and I don't know. But if we were gonna have like a canon second player, I would love for it to be Guilty Spark. Use the books. I mean, use that potential to its best potential ever. Like, but yeah. Anyway, I really loved her writing as compared to Greg Bear. It's not that it's better. It's just different, and somehow enhances what he already made. So there's that. And the big like point of contention is Spark knows that Forge is dead, but doesn't tell Ryan because he doesn't want to hurt her. Spark makes it to Earth and he talks to, I guess, like a remnant AI version of the librarian. It's a little confusing, but it is essentially all that he wanted to do in this book was either bring his friends back from the dead or die himself and go to the domain because he wanted to be with his friends, because he just kind of got like a wash of his memories back and it was overwhelming and stressful, and he realized how alone he was. We started making friends with the Ace of Spades crew, but he talks to the librarian and he realizes he kind of already found what he was looking for. Maybe not the same friends, but friends and family nonetheless. So he sticks with the crew. It was also interesting at the very end. And of course, Oni shows up and they do stuff, but they lose and they escape. Not that important. But Ryan, well, first off, there's a lot of implications that Spark is very important for the future, which I don't know how true that is, but they claim that he is. Which I would love to see. Like, the potential there is amazing. But also, Ryan's kind of speculates that maybe the mantle responsibility isn't meant to be carried by one species. Maybe it isn't precursor, then forerunner, then human. Maybe it shouldn't be that way. Maybe it should be humans saying Healy, grunts, jackals, Gina Harley, the brutes. Maybe it should be all races together, coexisting, carrying that mantle, which I thought was really beautiful. And that would be a good way to end the franchise if they ever do. Would be everybody coming together, kumbaya, in peace. No longer wars, because this series is fraught with it. To just have peace and to carry that mantle responsibility together. But overall, thrilled by this one. Absolutely loved it. If you're not really into the Halo Expanded Universe, but you're like, this looked cool, I heard 343 was in it, yeah, check it out. Like, but don't read it if you haven't read the Forerunner trilogy. That's a must. But so is this one. So far I have 4 books that I actively would recommend for anyone to read in the Halo Expanded Universe. Everything else is like, yeah, it's fun, but only if you're like a diehard fan. Otherwise, that's about it. Thank you all so much for watching. Up next, we have Halo Spartan Ops and some shorts, Halo Escalation, and in the first season of the audio drama, hunt the truth. Till then, let's finish the fight.